but it is ran by Buddhist monks.
How about you do any research about Dalai Lama?
I didn't do any research about Dalai Lama, no.
Last time we talked about him, right?
Yeah.
Okay, let's go over again. Yes, so actually start from here, from the 7th century, where we discussed last time, right? When Buddhism was spread to Tibet, and this one Tibetan prime minister went to India to study Sanskrit, and after that, when he went back, he prayed the Tibetan language. And studied, and later on they had several missionary groups from India. We remember we studied about Atisha, Tongkap, Shankapa, and so forth, who propagate Buddhism over there. And this is all this oldest tradition. There's a mystic Dhamma Bhava, the one that created Buddhist tradition in Tibet. But
what year was that?
I think in right here, this in this 8th century, 8th, 9th century, and here, the Chinese government now they base upon this story. You know, in the past, in order to control the small neighbor kingdoms, the emperors used to send their princess to different small kingdom countries so that they could get married with that kind of kingdom emperors, so that they have some kind of relationship. And that's during this 8th century. So the Chinese emperor sent this princess to Tibet to get married with the Tibetan king. And up to now, they base upon this history to occupy Tibet.
So they were arranged.
Yeah, you can say they arranged. But they used their own princess as a political tools to control the other people in different countries.
Okay.
Yeah. And later on, remember during the Yuan dynasty, they promote Tibetan traditions, and they initiate the Dalai Lama tradition. Remember, that's what we kept talking about Dalai Lama and what do you call the other one? Dalai Lama and Panchen Lama. Panchen Lama. So basically from the 15th century up to now, people respect Dalai Lama as a political and religious head of Tibet. Up to now, and now of course Dalai Lama, the 14th Dalai Lama, he denounced his political course so that he could have more time for religious inclination. Yes.
How is he?
Now, how old he is?
Yes.
I think he's about 73, 74. Yeah. So last time I showed you a picture, right? So anyway, this is really complicated. And now, one of the reasons why he denounced the political pause, because Chinese communist regime, they say that we have the right to appoint the next Dalai Lama. Why? So that they can control Tibet forever. Make sense?
The communists?
The Chinese communists.
Okay.
Yeah, because they based on this kind of story, the story that sent their princess to get married with the Tibetan king. They say that they have the right to control. Tibet belong to their country, and now they say that they have the right to pick up the next Dalai Lama. So that's what the tactics that the 14th Dalai Lama say. Well, now I denounce my political cause. It confuse people too. And of course, this is another reason why he doesn't want to go to politics.
So he's from Tibet?
Yeah. He escaped from Tibet in 1959. Remember we talked about him? After the Chinese communist air armies occupied Tibet. Yes.
Would that affect their way of religion, practicing their religion with the Communist Party?
Yes. Do you guys know about this news as many Tibetan, more than 100 Tibetan people, monks, nuns, and lay people, devote themselves to protest the Chinese communist oppression. More than 100 people already, devote themselves already, as the way to protest the oppression. And I read many stories in the monastery. They put the people plus the video cam, so forth, to watch every activities of monks and nuns. What do you think?
The Chinese government monitoring how they perform their religious
Especially the large one.
activities at
The
the
large one.
monastery.
Yeah, it's just really horrible for people over there now.
So they're very oppressed, the people.
You can say that. Yeah. So see, we're so fortunate, right? We have freedom of choice here in this country. Sometimes we take things for granted, but people in some other country, they don't have that kind of choice. Okay? So again, it's complicated relationship between Tibet and China. Okay, let's move on. The next one, please. 11. You right. Yeah.
Yes.
In Southeast Asia, what do you have?
What I found mostly was about Sri Lanka, Thailand, Cambodia, Laos, and Myanmar. And I read a lot about the, I guess it's they're the Theravada school is the dominant school of Buddhism in those countries.
Yeah.
And there's a tradition of temporary ordination for people. Like young men, it's common for them to take a break from school and go for like a week or two to a retreat or a monastery in order to gain merit and gain knowledge of Buddhist teachings. And in these countries, the temporary ordination will take place at the monastery. It's common in Thailand for unmarried, like not yet married young men to participate in this practice, whereas in places like Laos and Myanmar, some men return to the monastery from time to time after they're married if they get their wife's permission to do so. And monks in the Theravada school of Buddhism participate in things like collecting alms and a lot of other the practices we learned about. And in Thailand, I was reading about Buddhism has been closely associated with like the government authority or the ruling monarchy, and therefore there's like a hierarchical system of administration of monasteries in Thailand, and this comes from kind of the system of royal patronage of monasteries in Thailand. Like the monarch would pick an abbot for a monastery, and therefore like that monastery got better treatment than other monasteries who weren't whose abbots weren't picked by the monarch. And that's about all I got.
So next week, right? Monday and Wednesday, you go this part and even more. Okay, so basically, this is the Southeast Asia country right here, right? Burma, Thailand, Laos, Cambodia, Vietnam, and and part of Malaysia, Singapore, and so forth here. So this from the early times, actually starting from 5th century to the 13th century, most of Southeast Asian Buddhist country received the form of Mahayana traditions. But after Buddhism died out in India, they received the Theravada tradition from Sri Lanka that spread to Thailand, Burma, and so forth. So starting from it actually the 11th century up to now, this country they follow Theravada, but before they follow Mahayana. Yeah.
Is that, you're talking about today? Is this today?
Yeah, up to date. Up to date.
I thought Mahayana was...
Over here, this one here. Mahayana here.
I thought that was where Vietnam and all that was.
Yeah, and Vietnam is special. We have both tradition. The north is influenced by Chinese tradition, and the south is influenced by the Theravada traditions. So we have both traditions.
Okay,
We
yeah.
used to study and measure that.
Where's Korea at?
Korea here. Korea and Japan, they receive directly the version from China. Zen, Buddha, and so forth. When we get back from spring break, when we talk about Mahayana tradition, we talk about this. Okay. And let me tell you one thing. Like the Thai king in the early 20th century, he became a monk for many years. And after that, he is called a monk. And later on, he took the crown and he raised his own order, Buddhist monastic order. And that's what happened. We can mention, right? So they have the popularization for the monastic order for the Sangha. And especially in this country, of course, in the past, but not now. In the past, men supposed to be monk for a short period of time, couple months, couple years, etc. Depending on their wish. The king, the officer, and so forth. I met some Burmese people. They say that in Burma, let's say if you are a gentleman and you want to propose the marriage to one lady, right? The family of that lady will ask you, have you been monk before? You know why they ask that? So whenever they recognize that let's say you were a monk, in short period of time, they recognize you are a good person because you were trained in the monastic community. Understand that? That's why they ask. And even you see many young novices, right? They live in monastery. That's all the way for the children to stay in the monastery. Of course, most of the time in traditions, they don't expect you to become a monk or nun for the rest of your life. You can be a monk for a couple of months, couple of years. Yeah. But in Mahayana tradition, it's different. People, according to their view, they expect us to remain as a monks and nuns for the rest of our life. But of course, many people fail to at this job. So that's normal. Right? But anyway, in the Theravada tradition, they can come and go, but they have to follow this rules. So please, next week, you can study more. Okay, you can try some more tips. Okay, good. All right, so that's the general information, and then we start in detail about Mahayana and Theravada a little more. Okay, now let me move on. Go back to this idea. Okay, number 2. Yeah, what happened in the 2? Yeah, you don't know the 2, right?
Doesn't matter.
Yeah, what happened?
That there is not a like a common view through Buddhism. There's many different variations. Buddha did not speak directly about the topic of euthanasia. He spoke about suicide.
Okay. That's different.
Yeah.
Buddhism is different. One is someone really commits suicide. Another one is that if our relatives stay in the state of coma or irreversible state, right? That's different story, is that right? So this one I'm talking about our relatives, the one who stay in that type of state, coma state.
Yes.
That's okay, you can talk.
It's believed that if someone is letting the physical pain affect they'll have mental suffering, so they're not in their clear mind if they were to choose euthanasia.
Oh, that's okay. Yeah.
Okay. And as far as being someone who assisted with euthanasia, Buddhism places a strong emphasis on no harming of any living creature. So it's considered going against the Buddhist culture if you were to help assist someone with their euthanasia. And if a monk or nun were to help, they could be expelled from the monastery.
Yeah, what do we have there?
Pretty much the same stuff as the state of mind and death is very important. So doing euthanasia may not be a good thing because you're not focusing on your next life. You're focusing on ending your life. So they don't really think that's the best thing. Then there's the avoiding harm. And then there's a bit about karma where it said Buddhists regard death as a transition. So the deceased person will be reborn into a new life whose quality will be a result of their karma. So it produces two problems. We don't know what the next life is going to be like. If the next life is going to be worse than the one you're in now, then you wouldn't want to hurry up and get there, essentially. And the second problem is that shortening life interferes with the working out of karma and alters the karmic balance. So they don't want to do that. And I found similar things that, the Dalai Lama said he thought it was better to avoid it, but it comes down to there's some exceptional cases, so it should be on a case-by-case basis. I also found that in Theravada Buddhism, for Buddhist monks and nuns, it's very explicit that they should not help someone to die or tell them it would be better for them to die, because that's not in line with Buddhist beliefs.
Okay. You have to do? No. You don't have to make any will yet? Or probably
I have
don't.
life insurance.
You have life insurance? Okay. You have your will,
I will.
especially if you have children, right? Or well, probably, right? Let me tell you this story. This happened to me. I think, I don't know whether I mentioned it, but I would like to share with you. In my higher tradition, I got what we call Earth Star Bodhisattva. Have I mentioned about this Bodhisattva?
I don't think so.
No? Okay. Okay, let me tell you this one here. The Bodhisattva in the hell, remember? Let me type this name. The Bodhisattva in the one that met the vows to stay in the hell. This one here. Here. So his statue most of the time has a monk, Buddhist monk. Okay. This one here. Okay, anyway. So I'm going to my higher Buddhist tradition. This Bodhisattva, he made the vow to stay in the hell. He said that whenever the hell is empty, I will become a Buddha. Would the hell become empty?
Say it again.
He made the vows. Whenever the hell is empty, he will become Buddha. Can hell be empty? Never. Is that right? So he stayed out there to rescue hell beings.
Is that
Okay.
right? Is that right?
And that's one big sutra that I talk about. Anyway, let me tell you this real story that happened to me several years ago. I think 3 or 4 years ago. I got a phone call from a lady. She said that her brother has a stroke after he got back from work on Friday afternoon. So of course she rushed him to the ER, emergency room. And somehow doctor found out that his brain was dead. And they scanned his brain twice as well. And they pronounced that his brain was dead. And they asked that lady, the sister, whether to put life support for him or not. Of course, she asked my opinions. I said, sorry, I cannot answer this question. That's not my expertise. That's between you families and the doctor decision, not me. I'm just a spiritual doctor, a spiritual advisor, and not doctor. So of course, later on, they decide that not to put life support for me. And the doctor said, well, within a few hours, if without life support, you'll be gone. So of course, after the family is concerned with the doctor, they agreed to let him to pass away naturally. So at that time, I was in Chicago. I flew back and be ready to do funeral service for him. So of course, when they went to the hospital, he's still there. So I cried. I decided Buddhist Sutra plus decided Buddhist stand for him for a couple hours. But he's still there. So I went back to the temple. And the next day, I came back to do the prayer for him. He's still there. And I did it again in the evening, and it happened 3 days. And after that, I said, well, he still want to live. So I suggested to the sister and all the Buddhist people who follow me to recite the sutra for him. You do sutra, also Bodhisattva sutra. We recite for 7 days, once in the morning, one in the evening. And what happened after the 7 days? He came alive.
Really?
And even me, I'm so surprised too. And he came alive. So later on, they put him into the special room because during that 7 days, they didn't put any life support, any nutrition food, and so forth. And because he may have some kind of materials, is that right?
Yeah, some kind of
infection. So when we went into a physician, we have to wear the special clothes, you know that. So of course later on, he came back and present him to the nursing home. So anyway, that's the real story that happened to me.
It's amazing.
Yeah, amazing. That's really cool. I don't know.
Yeah,
Yes.
So sorry.
Yeah.
So his brain is okay, or?
Yeah, his brain is okay. He's in the nursing home now. Yeah.
So the doctor said that his brain was dead. Why?
With the documents, with all the documents, not with the medical records, not talking by chance. And the reason why, in Buddhist view, if someone stay in that state, in coma state, we don't dare to touch anything for us. We hope it may be fine. And this happened. Of course, sometimes this is horrible too. Sometimes it's sad stories to this, especially this one man. He stayed in that state for 3 years. I went back and forth in California to pray for him, but he's still there for 3 years before he got.
Is he conscious?
3 years in the coma state. But let me put it this way: even his body, even someone's bodies are in that state, in the coma state, they still understand what you're talking about. So the reason why we try our best to pray for them. And of course, if they have blessing, they come back. Otherwise, they come. Yes?
They had one man recently in the news. He had in Mississippi. They had pronounced him dead. They had put him in a body bag and shipped him to the funeral home.
He wake up.
Yeah.
That's right.
He started kicking the bag. Like, hey.
That's why, remember I told you, this is a different story, right? If I remember I told you, right? We respect the body, right? The corpse for 8 hours, remember that? So that at least we hope that they may come back, or at least they would overcome their physical suffering before they pass away, or after they pass away. Yes?
So how do you guys believe in cremation or burial
Yes,
or just anything?
After someone passed away, we have several people who put their relatives, who cremate their relatives' bodies and brought to our monastery, and sometimes we release to the street in front of our monastery. And sometimes I release that type of ash to the ocean and to the river. after, remember I told you after 49 days, after Buddhist view, then be gone. So we don't attach much to that.
Some people think that their spirit will come back if their body's not disposed of properly.
Yeah, probably, if it's go against their will.
Okay.
So let me go back, it's too far. Okay. So go back. If the point I want to say is if someone in state of coma, which would stay for Buddhist view, we don't want to touch. We don't want to inject anything that let it go. That's Buddhist view, and I don't know how you guys.
It's up to euthanasia, and it's up to the people. There are people if they go in a coma.
So it's up to that person if they have the view or not, right? But in my case, in my understanding, I met many situations that it's still hard for families to decide. Is that right? They really love their family members, right? The fathers, the mother, the children. It's not easy to let go at that moment. Is that right? So in my, most of the time I suggest to lay people, please put your will first. What you want your family members to do for you. It's much easier for them. Yeah.
Sometimes people make wills, and once you become dead, you're not really a person anymore. People have a tendency to change that will.
That's why it's a legally binding document.
Yeah. Yeah, when you're still healthy. Okay, anyway, there's a lot to talk about. Okay, let's move on. Okay, next one. Yeah, number 3. Yeah, what do you have then?
I had a really hard time finding anything. I'll look under your resources and that.
Okay, so what?
But there was in Indonesia, they had their first test tube baby, successful test tube baby, and all the doctors in that country were really excited, because this was a medical breakthrough. They were hoping to solve a lot of problems that other countries were having with, especially with religion, on having surrogate mothers. So they were really happy about this. But there were several religious groups that spoke out about it, except the Catholic Church. Well, they spoke out, but in negative ways. The Muslim, Protestant, and Buddhist spokesperson all had the same general answer, that the birth is acceptable in their eyes and in the religions. But Franciscan Father Alphonse Sadari of the Catholic Church spoke of the technology test tube pregnancies or in vitro fertilization as a travesty to human dignity. And he says the technology remains morally questionable, even if the egg and the sperm is from a married couple. But however, the chairman of the Indonesian Islamic Council and the Secretary General of the Union Indonesian Protestant Churches and the Vice Chairman of the Trustee of Indonesian Buddhists say otherwise. They say that it does not violate the norms of the religions as long as the sperm and ovum originate from the married couple. And they're not harming anyone. I guess that's like their biggest thing, that by doing this, it's helping people that could never ever conceive a child. And the Catholic Church was saying that they're not procreating in a sexual way. It's being done separately. They're not it's not being a personal thing. It's not the two parents coming together and creating something, but it is. They're still going and it's all their themselves going into the test tube, and it's going back into the mother anyway. So I don't understand why people.
Okay. Anyway, this is not right. We later on, not today. Today we don't have much time. We can run it, right? How will you go along with this one?
I think it's very dangerous.
They have animal cloning, right?
Mm-hmm.
but that's, we talk about that.
I think it's different than test tube birth. I think, I
Yeah,
agree
it's
with her,
very
it's
different.
test tube or birth is,
It's, they know the,
it's
they know
pretty
the
much the
fathers,
same
parents.
thing. It's just kind of gets an artificial start and then it goes on naturally from there. But that's completely different, that you're messing with the genomes
Yeah,
and stuff.
that's right. They
that's-
modify the gene, right? The
Yeah,
genetic,
that's very tricky.
DNA, right?
And now, yeah, and now the test tube birth has gone even farther. I understand the original, like just the basic concept of it is okay, but now you can pick out the color of your child's hair, their sex, their ideas, and it's ridiculous. Like I think that's too far.
Bioethics, yeah, let's go to bioethics.
Bioethics.
But think of all those organs.
Huh?
Think of all those organs you could clone and have readily available for